November 5th, 2018, and like always, we'll call the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ask you all to stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And at this point, we will grant Westwood Media Center the right to record the meeting. Ask if anyone else wishes to record the meeting. Okay, seeing none. Move along to our chairman's update. First, I'd like to remind everyone that tomorrow is Election Day, and no matter what side of the vote you stand on, please get out and vote and make your voice heard. Obviously, Sunday is Veterans Day, so I want to remind you that there will be a ceremony at Veterans Park on Sunday at 11 o'clock. Ceremony is held by the Veterans Department and the American Legion Post 320. We ask if you can to please attend the ceremony. It's a very brief ceremony, probably no longer than a half an hour. On Sunday, December 2nd, at 3 o'clock, which I think is an hour earlier than usual, we will have our annual tree lighting ceremony, and it will be right here in Town Hall. This year we have activities for the kids, including a horse-drawn sleigh rides, obviously our stilt walking elves, face painting, a balloon artist, holiday characters, and of course hot chocolate and cookies. There will be musical and dance performances by some of the dance schools in town. And our guests of honor this year are the students from the Westwood Integrated Preschool. We would also like to thank our generous sponsors who have contributed to and support this event every year. They include the Dedham Savings Bank, Fox Hill Village, the Julia Ruth House, Islington Barbershop, Westwood Family Chiropractic, Dr. Donald J. McClellan, Sheer Illusions, Westwood American Legion Post 320, and Chiara Bistro. Also happening this weekend, and you might want to make note of this, the East Street Bridge will be closed starting Friday morning at 9 o'clock. And unlike the first time, it's going to last a lot longer this time. It is expected to last until almost Monday morning. So East Street Bridge will close Friday morning at 9 o'clock, so you will not be able to get underneath the East Street Bridge at all this weekend. So please plan accordingly. All right, and that includes if you happen to be on the Islington side and wanted to go to Veterans Park for the veteran ceremony, have to find alternative arrangements instead of East Street. The T will start. They are going to move the superstructure off the Mass DOT yard on Grafton Ave. It's going to travel along Stratford Road. Then they will lift it into place. They'll be removing the old one and lifting the new one into place, so there'll be a crane in the middle of the road for a good portion of the weekend. They will spend the rest of the weekend smoothing out the tracks and make sure that it's ready to resume service for Monday, November 12th. That also means that there will be busing between Norwood Central and the Dedham Corporate Stations on Friday night, and then from Forge Park to Dedham Corporate Center on both Saturday and Sunday. So you'll not be able to get the train at the Islington train station either. You must take a bus, and the T is taking care of notifications. In case you haven't noticed, there are signs everywhere, including right on 95, that the East Street Rotary will be closed this weekend. Yes.
Mike, is the bus starting at 9 a.m. on Friday? Because it says 9 p.m., but the shuttle must be 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
Okay, so all day Friday, people can still take the transportation. They just have a bus link. Okay.
Oh.
If it's starting Friday morning.
Yeah.
I think they're moving the superstructure
They're moving the
all day Friday,
superstructure
and then
over.
Friday night they'll put it in place. So the train will still be able to
So
operate.
it's not, okay.
The train will still operate until 9 p.m. on Friday night.
That's
Great.
right.
Okay,
I think that's
thank
right.
you.
And Nancy, you wanted to tell us about the interfaith?
Yes, I would just like to bring to people's attention that on Monday, November 19th, which is the Monday right before Thanksgiving, at 7 p.m., the annual interfaith service will take place at the Temple Beth David Synagogue. And this is a community-wide event. You don't have to be affiliated with any faith. You can come and just enjoy a service and a service of Thanksgiving. So I want the community to be aware of this event.
Okay. That's it for the chairman's update. Moving along to our scheduled action, because we do have a full schedule this evening. First, we have a public hearing for Prime Porsche for a one-day license. Nora? Anyone here from?
I didn't see anyone.
Okay, do we want to postpone it?
They were expected. Do you want to?
Yeah, why don't we just
Wait.
kick it back and
Yeah.
see if they do show? How's that? But stay up there, Nora, because we have other things to do. Next, we have a change in ownership for Smash Burgers. Anyone here? Come on up, gentlemen.
I've been here since 6:30.
Well, they didn't come last time, so it's balancing out.
But you're up first, so you're really lucky
We
tonight.
did I came last time. We both came last time. It's our mistake, though.
That's
Oh.
okay.
Our office is in Colorado, and our attorney illustriously put it in my calendar for 7:30, but 7:30 in Colorado is 9:30 here.
Oh, yes.
Ah.
Well, we
I
were
should've-
probably still here, but
No, no, you weren't. I
No.
missed you. They told me I missed you by about like 4 minutes.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
too bad.
So I apologize.
Welcome
for
back.
the inconvenience. Sure, my pleasure. Sorry
Same
about
place.
that.
So you want to have a change in the ownership for Smash Burgers from franchise back to corporate ownership?
Correct. It was a
Okay.
franchise owned, and we purchased the 3 restaurants in the greater Boston area.
And so do you want to tell us a little bit about it, Nora, or gentlemen, whichever?
Do you want to explain the change? The operation of the restaurant is the same from the town's
Same local
perspective.
management.
It's, right.
Even the
Israel?
same general manager's still in place, so
Okay.
nothing's really changed operationally, just a change of ownership,
Okay.
just a different entity.
All right.
And they've been operating under a new CV license that was issued under the old
Right.
alcohol license when the alcohol license was removed.
Okay. Don? Nancy?
So we have a combination of both going on tonight.
Yes.
The CV.
So we're replacing the temporary CV with a permanent CV and alcohol license, which will be valid through the end of the year, and then would have to be renewed under the normal program.
But you wouldn't need to come back for the renewal.
I'd be happy to come back.
Well, that won't be necessary.
But thank
But it
you.
is important that we have this connection because it is a change in ownership and the alcohol licenses that we issue. We want to make sure everybody understands the responsibility that goes along with them.
Sure, of course.
The seriousness with which we take it. So that's why we wanted you here, so we could look at you and tell you that.
Okay? My pleasure.
Anything else? Okay, so since this is a public hearing, open it up to the public, see if there are any questions or comments. Seeing none, I will take a motion.
Okay, that I would move that the board grant approval of a common victulars with wine and malt alcohol beverage license for Smash Burger contingent upon final ABCC approval.
I will second that.
All those in favor?
Aye. And how
Thank
is
you.
business going in Westwood?
You-
How is business going in
Really
Westwood?
You
good.
want to tell?
Yeah,
Yeah?
we're up probably like 7% over last year, I believe.
Good,
So, yeah.
excellent.
That's great.
Well, good luck. We wish you continued success, and hope everything stays well down there for you.
Great, thank you
Good to
very
meet
much.
you. Thank you for
Thank you.
coming.
My pleasure.
All right, thank you very
Thank you.
much.
All set?
All set, yes.
Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Good night.
So Nora, you want to have some changes to our alcohol rules and regulations?
Yes, so you were provided with a draft set of revisions to the alcohol rules and regulations. This was produced by Karen Flynn, our licensing agent, and it's in response to a few changes that had been recommended over the last couple of years. Some of the changes were actually recommended as far back as 2015, but had not been formulated. Some of them are intended to just change nomenclature to be more consistent with other regulations, and some of them are intended to incorporate the prohibition on BYOB, which has been practice of this board, but has not been clearly stated in the regulations before.
Okay.
Why would we do that now where we didn't before? Is it, because didn't we start this under Chief Chase? And he was very much opposed to a BYOB thing. I'm just surprised that,
Why it wasn't addressed?
yeah.
I don't know why it wasn't in the original regulation. Some towns prohibit it, others don't. It's been our practice that we tell businesses that they can, apply for a license now that licenses are available. Prior to that, there were BYOBs in Westwood before we had licenses. We have not allowed any to continue since then, but it's not specifically addressed in the rules and regulations. So I would imagine that if a business chose to, it would be difficult to defend our position without revising the rules and regulations.
Well, there's still an expense associated with getting the license.
Right.
There
And
is.
that's the deterrent and has been. But I remember
Yeah, I can't
Bill
remember
Chase
why it
being,
was.
well, it's
I think it was because it was hard to regulate.
Yeah.
the liability, yeah. He wanted to be
Of a
sure.
server.
He felt that it was important that we be sure that people have the same standards across different restaurants. It's disadvantage to restaurants who go through the licensing and purchase and sell the alcohol to have their standard, and if it wasn't the same for a restaurant with a BYOB. So it's to level the playing field, too.
So,
Anyway, it would
no, I
happen.
guess that's kind of where I was, trying to understand the practical implications of this. So, the stating the prohibition to the BYOB, as it stands now, you're saying if an establishment opened as a restaurant and asked to be a BYOB business, we don't have grounds to deny that, or they could just do it
Well-
as of right? Is that,
I can't say if we do or don't have grounds. What I can say is that we have told restaurants that they could not do that, but that they're free to apply for an alcohol license.
okay?
But there's nothing in your rules and regulations that states that that's the town's position. So the recommendation is to put that in the rules and regulations.
And so if a restaurant were to try to open in Westwood now, do we have alcohol licenses available? Can we?
We do.
We do.
We do, okay. And how many do we have? What is there?
I don't know the number offhand. We have a considerable number.
More than we expect.
More than we
we'd
need.
ever have to give out, yeah.
I don't want
Can
to
you give us
sit,
a recap on that?
I can do
sometime?
that for you next meeting,
Yeah.
yes.
I just don't want to vote tonight to state a prohibition and then 6 months down the road, we see it's a good idea for some new restaurant. So we're comfortable doing this and sticking with it.
Yes, I
Okay.
don't think we're in danger of running out of licenses.
And even if we were so fortunate to have a number of great restaurants who want to be here that exceeded our capacity, it's very common to go to the state
And request
to
an
request
increase in
additional
the
licenses. It's done by many communities.
And they're relaxing that, that
Right,
gets
so that's
relaxed, I
not
think
the-
they're
Didn't the new regulation, the MMA, kind of leave more discretion to the town
more-
anyway?
it's more open,
Yeah.
yeah, than it ever
Yes.
was, yeah. And
So
it's for that same reason.
we're not in,
Okay, I just have a couple more questions.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
The Alcohol Review Committee reporting to the town administrator, what's
That's-
the driver of that?
Was that a change since the charter?
It's a change, no.
No.
What it is there are certain committees that are advisory through me to the Board of Selectmen or to others that have administrative things that we discuss. They're not really public meetings. Administrative meetings are not, don't have to go through the open meeting process like policy board. So the outcome of that committee, like other committees that we meet on a daily basis, come and make a recommendation in open session to the Board of Selectmen. See the product of those meetings. And so those administrative, now we never, up until this last year, we never fine-tuned that process. So this year, if you remember, when we appointed boards and committees, we distinguished between town administrator ones that are administrative and the policy-making boards, which are the Board of Selectmen.
Right, I think I'm a little bit concerned. I don't want the driver of this decision to be, I think the more transparency we can have around alcohol licenses, the better. So if the driver is to avoid open meeting, I don't think that's a good reason.
Well, that's not what it is. There's information that's discussed in these meetings that's administrative. It's a police chief, fire chief, it's staff.
Health director.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's staff. It's not, these aren't policy boards, these are individuals that are operating as staff that we meet during the day when we get people together. So it's to make it clear that that's what we're doing. We've always done it that way. We've never posted those meetings, but we want to make sure that, there can be no criticism. of not
Can we
posting those.
can we defer on that piece tonight?
Can,
Okay.
fine.
And I think that was it. I thought I had one more. Anything?
So,
I do.
go ahead, Nancy. Go ahead, no, I'll wait. Go ahead.
Nora, I was trying to piece together what we were told in terms of some of the edits, and I see the one in Appendix A on the first offense, where previously, if I'm reading this correctly, we had warning to 4-day suspension, meaning it's anywhere from a warning
Right, up
to a
to.
Up to.
4-day
Right.
suspension. But now it also has hours restriction, not just the up to 4 days for clarification, but if I'm seeing one that says warning, hours restriction, and/or up to 4-day
That's
suspension.
right. That's right.
So what are you thinking in terms of the hours restriction? Why are we adding that? Because that's not what,
I think
In summary.
to give the board more leeway in what they choose for a penalty. So there may be a business that you choose to allow to operate in the daytime and not at nighttime, depending on what their what their violation is, rather than actually suspend their license. It's giving you the authority to start with, that's the low end of your restriction, all the way up to the 4-day
Are you
suspension.
hearing that that's the way it's done anywhere else? Is that why this is coming
I
forth? 'Cause
believe that this was a suggestion, I think, from the chief, I believe at an alcohol review committee meeting, that he had seen it done that way in other locations, but
And if you recall, there are certain things, we've had requests for extending the hours in certain instances. We've had instances where folks have asked for opening it up earlier on Mother's Day, for instance. And if you had a person, an entity was violating the regulations, especially during those times that you've extended, you could now, if it was a normal practice to give them the license, you could use that as a penalty for them, that they no longer will be considered, for instance, to have extended hours from 9 to 11, if that had been granted.
Yeah, I would love to know where that's done elsewhere, because I think it's superfluous. I don't really
I think
we
it's
need
done in Boston, to be honest with you. I've seen it in Boston, some of the,
it. Last time I
restaurants
checked,
would be-
Westwood's not Boston.
I can
well,
get
you asked where it's
information
done, I
from,
didn't.
Yeah, that wouldn't be
find
my
out from other
point of
towns
comparison.
what they do before your
That
next
would be
meeting.
good. Just, you know, it's not a big deal, because it doesn't mean we have to use it, so we could ignore it. I just don't think it's necessary, but I could be convinced otherwise.
It broadens your penalties, that's all.
So Nora, as the personal injury attorney, I look at the policy, the insurance limits, and say, why are we so low? I mean, it's not really a lot of money more, a lot more money to go from 250, 500 to $1 million, 2 million. I mean, nowadays, most people have 250, 500 on their automobiles. So if we're talking about liquor license and liability for that, I look at, I don't know, how far would the town be responsible, or could be responsible after that? And we might want to check with our insurer, Mike, and see if we have a minimum, you know, that we're supposed to have. Tom, you know what I'm talking about. So they may require us to have 1
So
million, 2 million
these-
instead of 250, 500.
That's an area that wasn't recommended for change. That was
No.
a number that was adopted in 2004 when licensing was first put
Yeah,
into place. So
so-
I think it's very appropriate to
Yeah, I mean,
raise the
a
amount.
million is nothing
I
anymore.
can check to see what other towns do, what the amount is, and we'll check with the
Most-
insurance agent
And
as
we'll
well.
find most establishments, like, I don't know, Not Your Average Joe's, Del Frisco's, theirs is like $10 million. So I think 250, 500 is way too low.
So can I suggest we defer a vote till the next meeting?
Yep.
It sounds like,
That's good.
Yep.
I don't want to do it piecemeal and
And
come
what
back
I'd
with
like
it.
you to do is take another look at
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
and
yeah.
any other
I
issues,
think
because
it's
I'd rather
important.
have everything resolved.
Yeah, we'd like to resolve it all at once instead
Yeah,
of,
Rather be
yeah,
one vote.
That's right.
Yeah,
So
okay.
if you could get anything you want us to look at to us, we'll be happy to do this. This has been a long time in coming. I mean, we've been working on this for several months. And so we'd like to get it done right.
Okay,
Okay.
moving on.
so that was not a public hearing, so we will continue that matter to our next meeting. All right, Tom, looks like you're coming up to see us, Tom. Next, we have the community electricity aggregation.
That's correct. This is actually a program that's being proposed by WEAC, the Westwood Environmental Action Committee. Excuse me. The purpose of the program is to aggregate the electric consumption in the town and then allow the residents who choose to become a part of the aggregation to either save a little or spend a little extra, so that all of the energy that they consume technically comes from renewable energy sources.
Okay.
So you may end up saving a quarter of a cent because of the aggregation itself, being able to get a cheaper price for electric in general, or you may choose to add a cent or two to the kilowatt hour consumption that you have as a means of saying, okay, I want 50% of my energy to come from a renewable source as opposed to 10% or as opposed to 100%. This does a number of things. First of all, there's no cost to the town at all. It's all handled by brokers, and it's all handled, and the program is endorsed by the Mass, we get it wrong,
MAPC.
MMA, Mass Municipal
Mass
Association,
Area
Planning Commission.
Planning Commission.
There's so many MMs, As and Bs and Cs.
MAPC, yes.
The residents can opt in or out at any time. If they don't like what they have, they can get out, and there's no cost, no penalty. Eversource just picks them back up as a customer. Eversource handles all the billing, So every month, the bill comes as normal, and you just pay a penny less, or save a penny. The costs to the household, as I said, can range from a little savings to spending a little extra penny. The broker has to handle all the RFPs. The town approves the RFP, but the broker does all the publicizing of the program, has to get everybody to sign up, has to do all the opt-in, opt-outs, has to do all the paperwork. There is essentially no work that has to be done by the town itself except to approve the implementation of the program. And then there is never any obligation to proceed if we don't like what we see at the end of the time that they get all the work done. We can always stop it right there at that point. They will require eventually the approval also of FinCon and of the town at the town meeting. So they'll be preparing something at that point. That's why it's good to get started early as we are, because this is going to have to be advertised, and it's going to have to be some education of the town as to what the options are, and the people who may or may not want to become a part of it. So what it does, the result of a program like this, it obviously stimulates the production of clean energy in the state. The more demand there is, the more that'll be built, and these people have to have customers before they're going to be selling it. And it's an easy option for residents who feel strongly about climate change to participate on a very nominal basis without very little cost.
Okay.
So again, we're asking the endorsement of the selectmen to proceed with this program.
So really, you're looking for us just to give the okay to get started and see where it kind of leads from here?
Yes.
And get a town
Okay.
meeting. I'm
Questions?
fine. Yes.
Yes?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions. You said no cost to the town, but I was looking at, it could be a dated document, Tom, so
Sorry.
forgive me on that, but this is from Guide to Municipal Electric Aggregation in Massachusetts. Deval Patrick was governor, so it's dated. It talks about cost to the municipality, and I haven't been able to fully absorb this, but you said there was no cost, so
Yes, but that's if it's done by the town, the aggregation itself, as opposed to having an outside broker do all the work. In this case, it would not be done by the town.
yeah. So
Just approving somebody else to do it for us.
It also, if I'm not mistaken, everybody's in, you have to opt out?
No.
If it gets through the town, at least that's the way it used to be.
It's advertisement, and then people opt in. Now, everybody does not normally opt in. You opt in or you opt out if you don't
Oh,
like it
okay, because
later.
this all says you have to opt out. And in other communities, it says you,
No, you're not 100% in to start with. They have to go and
That's not
advertise
what
it
it
and
says.
opt into the program. And then once they're in the program, anytime they want, they can opt out. That's how I
there is
understand it.
there is an aggregation of 22 or plus communities in our area that Dedham's a part of.
Dedham is doing it already. Right?
And based on what I read, they just renewed for 3 years, whatever, a contract was renewed. Is that something that's available to us if we were to, say, a year from now, want to be part of it? Could we enter into an existing aggregation of towns, or would we be,
I don't know off the top of my head. That is something we could easily explore in the process of going through this.
yeah.
But Tom, isn't the aggregation that being spoken to now, the aggregation of the town's electric use, which we already participate
correct.
in, whereas what we're explaining is this is now allowing the residents
Residents,
to come
yeah.
on.
It
So
is.
So
It is
this
what's
is
up to the
brand
town.
new to communities that's being made available.
It does not affect the town municipal itself, would not be a part of this. In other words, the electricity that the town consumes would not come from this aggregation.
Oh, it's very, I wasn't even asking that, but I did read that in some cases, just the town buildings could be part of it versus,
You could.
The
There are-
other.
There are all kinds of aggregation. Another one is the community aggregation, where we build a project, and then we allow a certain percent to come to the town, and another percent to go to the residents of the town, depending on the sales of the savings we could pass on to the residents. That's a community aggregation program. That's something we're looking at also. We also have another option where we become what they call an off-taker in existing projects. And that allows us, for example, to get a 10% discount on anything we buy that we put into the aggregation in this case. So for example, in the case of Westwood, I looked at the possibility of taking $300,000 of our electric bill and putting it into an aggregation, And that would mean we would get a refund or a credit, guaranteed credit of about 10% of that 300,000 or 30,000 per year for doing it. And that, again, the advantage to us is the 30,000. The advantage to the developer of the project is they can't do the project without an off-taker like Westwood and other communities to take the full output of their project. So they're going to make
There's
their...
an awful lot of information to absorb here. I personally am not ready to say yes to even this going to the next stage because I want to understand more. I understand if my colleagues want to. I just have to learn more because this is, I've heard of several programs before. I've also spoken to people in a separate context where, I don't know, I didn't feel comfortable about it. So I have a lot I want to learn and understand about it before I would want it to go into the next steps.
Is the goal to get to the Springtown meeting? Is
The
that-
goal would be to get to the Springtown meeting.
Okay.
I would like to,
So there's
the
some
process
time.
need,
Yeah,
yeah,
we have a
this
little bit of
process
time.
need, yeah, there's plenty of time. The process, all we're doing is wanting to go forward so we could put an article in this month, or December 15th newsletter to tell people about it, to begin the advertising process for informing folks, because it will require town meeting voters. Tom has already indicated. That means that the majority of the folks that show up for town meeting are going to have to say, yes, we think this is a good idea.
Right, if we're going to have to go to FinCom than town meeting, though, I'd rather we're aligned
Right.
for a vote. So
we'll-
could
we'll
I
just make
suggest
you
that
feel
between
more
now and
comfortable.
the next meeting, they talk? Between now and the next meeting?
I mean,
I mean, we just got this weekend, so
No, I
I
get
didn't
it.
have
Yeah.
a chance to do other than some of my own research.
And there are as Tom has just alluded to, there are various aggregations. We're just simply talking about the aggregation for the residents of the community, which is different from the aggregation that we participate in as the town governance.
Yeah, the town is a part of a MMA. All of our electric supply is purchased through MMA, and we get a fixed price, and we're actually for 5 years through 2022. The price of electric that we buy as a town is fixed at 9 cents, which is turning out to be a bargain.
yes, it is.
As things
Let's
go
spend a
on.
little time talking after this if we could, okay?
Sure.
That'd
Yeah,
be great.
it's not a public hearing, so we don't need a vote. I would just defer it till the 26th.
Do we put a blurb in the newsletter, or would that be okay? No? Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I feel that if we said yes at this point, it would mean that we think it's the right thing to do at this point, not just allowing it to go to the next steps, and that's what I'm uncomfortable with.
No, I agree.
I don't want to introduce that until I
Well, for
I
me,
feel
what
like
think
I
is
understand it enough.
I won't be able to make a final conclusion until Tom gets more information. So that's what I think
Right.
is the hardest part, is that to make a final conclusion, I think you still have to continue to investigate and then
Okay.
bring it back to us.
We could
So-
have the broker that's approved come and make a presentation also to the board, yeah. Who has much more in-depth knowledge, of course, than I do.
I don't know, you seem pretty knowledgeable.
It's
money's
a
on
lot.
you.
It's a lot of information, and I'm never comfortable saying let's just take a vote and kick it down the road. I think I want to make sure we're all fully versed. Never as much as you are, Tom, but at least have a working knowledge. I don't as we sit here tonight.
Do we have specific questions we want Tom to answer or someone to answer when we come back?
Yeah, not yet, I really have
Not
to
yet.
sit and talk to him.
Okay. Okay,
Very good.
Thank you, Tom.
we'll see you on the 26th, perhaps? All right, so next we have a public hearing on the tax classification. We're informed on the way in that we cannot take a vote on this tonight because certification has not yet been provided by the state. So we will open the public hearing and continue the public hearing to November 26th. We will take it up at that time for the tax classification purposes from the assessor's office and from our,
Is Pam here?
Pam. No,
and Pam Dukeman, yes.
Yes, the finance director.
So do I have a motion to
Yeah, so I move that the public hearing scheduled for this evening regarding the town's tax classification be postponed until Monday, November 26th at 7:30 PM here at the police station.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Al? Next, we have our report from the tax collector.
Thanks for the big turnout, you guys.
This is only about 4 hours. Buckle up.
Okay, thank you for inviting me tonight. Won't be too bad. All have good news, so that's a good thing.
It's a good start.
All right, so this first chart reflects 11 years of excellent tax collection rates in the town of Westwood. This past year, in 2018, we collected 99.12% of the total tax levy, which represented about 5,000 real estate bills per quarter. That's what we send out. And the remaining balance, we take, we protect the town's interest, and what I do is I record liens at the registry to protect the outstanding balance in the town's interest. Next chart reflects the town of Westwood versus comparable communities, and we've highlighted Barnstable, Canton, Hingham, Waltham, Wellesley, and ourselves. Other receivables have been very strong as well. Through the end of June of 2018, the motor vehicle excise tax at over $3.5 million, which represents 97% collection rate. Of that 3% that's not collected, we flag the individuals at the registry. They also pay deputy fees and 12% interest on their outstanding liability, and we collect that money before they can renew their license, so we're protected on that end. The ambulance, another $745,000, which is 68% of net billings. And the other town accounts for over $1 million are broken down by police details, which represent 85%, or $909,244. We also collect trash fees, trash barrel fees of $25,735, which represents 1%. Cemetery of $135,000, which represents the other big piece at 13%. And then we have small other town accounts, library rentals, fire alarm fees, and fire details. Here are your 10 top taxpayers in Westwood. And we, as you know, we have a split tax rate between the residential and commercial, and we're going to talk about that before myself this evening, but the state probably hasn't certified that. That's why
That's correct.
Pam got off the hook tonight. And so the budget in the tax collector's office is for 2019, $197,211, which represents, broken down between salaries and expenses. And I believe it's the most cost-effective department in town, because the amount of money that we collect, $83 million, the budget represents less than 1% of the total collections. So just a last chart, and I know we have a long evening, so it's long-term staffing. Janice and Laurie do a great job in the office. Very competent individuals. They do a great job with the residents in the town of Westwood. They should be commended. Ongoing attention to detail and accuracy. We continue the automated collection. We've also added online collections for the elderly taxation fund. People can pay by credit card, which Unibank charges a 3% fee, or they can do it as ACH, and that's taking a little bit. Most people are still writing checks or including the check with their real estate payment, so that'll take a little longer, but that's a positive. We continue to maintain a staffing at high level with very high collection rates. Collections, $83 million in the budget. And one last item, tax title. The town of Westwood's not in the real estate business, so we really don't want people's property. We want everybody to pay. We have a great collection rate, but there are some that have issues. So a couple of weeks ago, I recorded actually 8 liens for 2018. In 2017, we recorded 9, which is really, really good.
And they tend to get cleaned up eventually, or?
They do. They do.
How long has it been since we've actually taken over a property?
We've turned over to the treasurer, and that's his ballgame. I cannot remember the last time we did.
Yeah. Well, that's
which
a
is-
good thing.
We're really, really,
Awesome.
we're really lucky.
think the last one was Highview, that vacant parcel.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, I don't think there's been one since.
It's been a very long time.
Thank you, Al, for all your efforts. This is a great story.
And your staff.
Thank you.
Get you out nice and early too, Al. All right, moving along to new business. Oh, do we want to go back to anyone come in from Prime Push?
Oh, yeah.
Excellent. That's okay. That's all right, come on up.
Weather-related issue.
We continued to allow you to take care of your weather-related issues.
Not a pleasant drive over here.
Just wait till
Yeah.
tomorrow.
No.
Another,
All right, if you would just identify yourself for the record, please.
I'm Scott Bernstein from MITCOM. David Schwartz, Prime Motor Group.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank
So
you.
you're here for a one-day liquor license because you're going to introduce a new Porsche Cayenne on Wednesday, November 14th. But it is by invitation only, so
Yes.
no one else is
Invite
allowed.
Well, if you
Just
if
because
you
we
own
put it
a
on
Porsche,
television
Tell
doesn't
everybody
mean they
they
can
can't
come.
come.
we would love you to join us if you're a Porsche owner.
Potentially.
See what kind of deal we could work out.
Now you're talking.
So Nora, did you want to tell us, so it's
This
been
will
through?
be very similar to the event that was held just over a month ago at the Audi dealership. Sky will be catering the event, food and alcohol.
Okay, just like Audi and Mercedes, right? Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Any questions?
No, this is a public hearing. though.
Okay. There's a public hearing. Do I have any comments from the public on granting a one-day liquor license to Prime Porsche? Seeing none?
Hearing none. Okay, I move that the board approve a one-day wine and malt beverage license for the Porsche Westwood event on Wednesday, November 14th, 2018, from 6 to 8 p.m.
Okay, and we want to grant the time from 3:30 to 10?
3:30 p.m. to 10 p.m.
okay, I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for coming.
Right back into the weather.
Have a nice
Thank
day.
you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you for making an adjustment.
No problem. Take care.
It's his fault.
Good night. It's his fault.
Okay, back to our new business. We have the local action unit for Westwood Place.
Hey, Sarah.
Hello,
Sarah?
Sarah? Come on up and join us.
Good evening.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
So Sarah, just for people who don't know, would you identify yourself for the record, please?
Sure, I'm Sarah Bouchard. I'm the town's housing and zoning agent. And
Welcome.
I'm here, thank you. I'm here to review the local action unit application for the 10 affordable units proposed at Westwood Place. What's before you is the full local action unit application that's to be submitted to DHCD. A copy of the draft regulatory agreement to be executed for those 10 units, and a copy of the affirmatively furthering for fair housing marketing plan for those 10 units. Just as a reminder, I know you're experts at this by now, but the regulatory agreement is not proposed to be executed at this time. What I'm recommending and requesting this evening is an approval of the application to be submitted to DHCD.
Okay. So we don't sign it till it comes back as fully
You sign the
approved?
application, but
Okay.
we execute the regulatory agreement after DHCD approves it.
Okay.
And how many units in total at Westwood Place?
100,
100.
100.
10 of which
10
will be
each.
affordable.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's 10.
Total 10? Yes. Total 10 or 15?
Total 10.
10? Okay.
And so is it split between the first phase and the second phase?
Yes.
Okay. And is Pulte in agreement with the, I see these mapped out where they're going to be laid throughout the development there? Okay.
Yep, so there's 5 one-bedrooms, 5 two-bedrooms, and they're equitably distributed throughout each of the buildings, on all floors and on both sides of the building.
Okay.
And no difference in the units themselves, right?
Any other questions?
If I can find my way to the motion, I will make the motion. And then Sarah, just after the motion, you should talk about the community visioning session next week,
Okay.
since we are on TV. Give me 1 second. I move that, this is kind of a technical one. I can't do it off the top of my head. Give me a minute.
You just click on it.
Oh, no. If only it were that easy.
It is. Where is it? New business?
Yeah. Okay. I move that the board approve the local action unit application and authorize the chair to issue the requisite signature of support and permit Pulte Homes of New England LLC and JWO Consultant Services to submit the application to the Massachusetts Division of Housing and Community Development for its final approval.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye. Do you want to just say a few words about the community visioning session?
Sure. So the Housing Partnership is in the midst of drafting a housing production plan, which is a document defined by the state in Chapter 40B relative to production of affordable housing. Part of that process is in community engagement, and as such, the partnership is hosting a community visioning workshop to invite members of the town to get together and assist in planning out that strategy for development of affordable housing. So that community visioning session will be next Tuesday at 7 p.m. at the Downey School Cafeteria. All are invited to attend. The events are listed on our website. The town's website also has an optional pre-registration link, so if anybody's interested in attending, I encourage them to sign up ahead of time to make the evening go a little bit more smoothly. But we anticipate it'll be about 2 hours, and we're looking forward to having some interactive visioning work with the public.
I'm sorry, Sarah, did you say what time it starts at?
It starts at 7 p.m.
7 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is this live? Are people
It is,
watching
it is.
live?
It is, yes.
So the survey is still open also, so that's
Okay.
the other portion
Open
of.
until when?
Today is the last day, but I haven't closed it yet, so if anybody's at home and wants to submit the survey, they've got a few more hours to do that.
The final plug.
The final plea to get in survey responses.
Our ratings match like Monday Night Football.
Yeah,
So,
right,
you know,
I'm
we
sure,
got a
I'm
lot
sure
to
lots
watch,
of
and
people
not
are
on
waiting,
yet.
but-
We're all going to do it now.
But anyway, we encourage everybody to participate in this process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you
See
very
you
much.
next week.
Okay. Next, Todd?
How are you?
Great, how are you? Good. So we are here to talk about the Farm Lane Pleasant Valley Road traffic meeting recap. Fill us
Correct.
in on what happened at the meeting and what the next steps are.
Okay, so following, we actually received quite a few letters of concern throughout the Pleasant Valley, Farm Lane, Fieldstone neighborhood. Following that, we embarked on a traffic volume and speed study. Conducted all the research and compiled the data, and coordinated a meeting back in October with the residents just to present our findings. Very casual meeting, had some good conversation. Typically what came out of the traffic study that was conducted, it reflected that there was a very high volume count during the morning hours weekday, typically between 7 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. There was no problems, no issues at night as far as volume goes, and speed really wasn't much of an issue. Posted speed limit within the neighborhood is 30 miles an hour. The study indicated an average of 31 miles an hour through the neighborhood during those peak times. Once we coordinated the meeting, we presented the data, and it was a very open discussion. The residents obviously are concerned with the volume. Ideas were tossed around. Some residents brought up the notion of sidewalk installations and kind of went over that and said that obviously it's a very pricey project to get into sidewalk installations throughout a neighborhood such as Fieldstone. And then obviously the conversation got shifted right into traffic calming devices. We all know that the town of Westwood has an extensive background pertaining to traffic calming devices with the Dover Cone and High Rock project that we did and Canton Street. We went into a lot of the history that went behind those two particular projects, really what numbers and data came into play to support and warrant specific devices going in those neighborhoods. And throughout the public hearing that we had, we explained to the residents that those devices, because there were a lot of comparisons that were going back and forth with speed humps, with raised intersections and curbing and so on and so forth. So we explained to the residents that those are measures that are typically incorporated into a neighborhood for traffic calming, speed issues. And even when we were going out throughout those projects for years and years, we would explain to the residents that it's not a traffic elimination project, it's a traffic calming project. And they proved to be successful with the speeds, but even down Dover, Cone, and High Rock, volumes have been reduced somewhat, but it's more the speed that was impacted. And again, we don't have that issue with Fieldstone, Farm Lane, Pleasant Valley. It's not to say that obviously, you know, at any given moment, there might be an individual that hits the pedal a little too quickly through a neighborhood. So we went into other options and, you know, what we're looking to do from our standpoint as far as trying to alleviate some of the traffic congestion along Route 109. We all know that we've embarked on the adaptive signal program.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's not going to come into play for at least another year and a half. Ken and his team are working diligently to try to get the wheels going as fast as we can with that. But from a construction standpoint and implementation standpoint, you're not looking until 2020. That said, you know, in the discussions we had with the neighborhood, they're looking for something much more immediate and a quicker fix. And, you know, we were pretty honest and transparent with even the adaptive signal program that it should help the problems that we see on 109. In theory, it couldn't solve the problems, though it might not solve the whole,
Right.
you don't know. It's the bottom line. You know, we had some good discussion pertaining to the Waze application in MapQuest, because quite frankly, all this traffic calming, we can do everything everywhere, but you're always fighting that application that everybody nowadays signs into and finds the shortest, quickest alternative to get from point A to point B. The residents really were on one topic, and the topic that they were focused on primarily was somehow creating no cut-through during a certain time frame. And the time frame they were looking for was roughly between 7 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. And they were inquiring as to the options perhaps with Farm Lane being part of that, so like a do not enter during a specific time frame. I haven't had much history or background pertaining to that. I know Mike has over the years, and maybe a member or two or three of the board might. But we had some initial concerns. One of the concerns I had was the queue lengths that would develop along Fox Hill. As of right now, there's a pretty significant one that develops early in the morning. So when we're taking away an average of 350 vehicles off of Farm Lane, Pleasant Valley, Fieldstone, where are they going to go? And if they go down Fox Hill, now your queue length is going to develop way past Farm Lane. And if they don't go down Fox Hill and now they get detoured somewhere else, is there a chance that the Waze application might take them down Gay Street and take a quick left on 109 and then take a right down Hartford and a right down High Rock and now into the Conant-Dover area that we're trying to. So I think with respect to closing off a road, would it decrease volume counts? Of course it would. But where are those volume counts then going to go? And quite frankly, what would my answer be to the other neighborhoods in town that have traffic cut-through concerns with respect to wanting to put up signs? And I don't know that you can say yes to one and not to others without a solid justification behind it. So all that said, I've had some good discussions. You know, we fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, we've had some experience with traffic calming devices and the process by which we've gone through and navigated through various projects. So we, you know, there's a a neighborhood liaison that I've been in contact with, and, you know, we're trying to be as helpful as possible, but at some point we're trying to, again, battle volume issues that there's not really a specific device that you can install. You can get creative and maybe come up with some signage, some various enhancements to a neighborhood to try to create more of a neighborhood feel. But I don't know that that would eliminate 350 vehicles cutting through a specific neighborhood. So in conclusion to the meeting that we had, we said, is from the public works standpoint and Beta Group, and Mike was with us, that we would try to come up with some ideas. And to be honest with you, we've had some ideas, and there's no real idea that I feel comfortable with going back to the neighborhood and saying, you know, this is going to work. Because again, you're battling applications, you're battling traffic. We're still looking at Route 109. I know years ago, it predates me slightly, but there was an attempt to perhaps pursue alleviating the congestion that's created up at Summer Street just before 128. We have a bottleneck situation. There was talks perhaps of exploring an opportunity at the state level to try to get the state involved to some degree and potentially fund a project that we create an extra lane that you wouldn't have that bottleneck congestion anymore at Summer Street, and you would carry right through to Route 128. That said, I spoke with Ken about this the other day, And he's going to actually look at the existing footprint of what's out there and the blueprint of what's out there for lane configuration and see perhaps, is it something that we could actually remark and restripe and add a lane out there now? Obviously, you'd have to get MassDOT approval if we're reducing shoulder widths. But if it's a possibility, then it would warrant sitting down with District 6 and perhaps getting their blessing to do so. But again, this is all trying to help out not only Pleasant Valley, Fieldstone, and Farm Lane, the other neighborhoods that are affected by this cut-through situation. So here we are. I guess that was about as brief of a recap, but thorough of a recap as I can provide. And I guess we'd like your feedback and thoughts perhaps based on what I just went over.
Is this correct? The 330 vehicle increase is in a 1 hour period?
It's about an hour to an hour and a half. So it's 7 a.m. to 8:30 a.m., Monday through Friday.
And do we have any data from Gay Street of where we think this vehicle flow is coming from?
Yes, we did. So what we have done is we have collected typical 48 hours account on essentially Pleasant Valley, Farm Lane, and Fieldstone. So what we have also done, which is really critical, was to perform a license plate analysis. So we had someone actually stood right at the intersection of Farm Lane and Fox Hill, record every single license plate between the hours of 7 to 9 and in the evening from 4 to 6. And also another person stand at the other end of Pleasant Valley and 109 and writing down all the license plates. So the car that came, make that right turn from basically from Fox Hill onto Farm, checks out the other end.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the 330 license plates that we have checked. So the total volume is a little over 90%. 90% of the folks that makes that right turn comes out the other end. So that confirms that those
cut
other
through.
folks that,
But do we know where their starting point was? Were they?
no, we didn't follow,
It's hard
but
to do.
we're pretty sure that, they're coming from Gay and, cut through Fox Hill.
And so traffic will find the path of least resistance.
Yes. And so is waste and all
So
the other.
I
So does water, but no.
So that's the answer, shut down Waze. Shut down
well,
Waze.
yeah, Waze doesn't help. It just transfers the traffic.
Right.
So is the fear if you're coming down Fox Hill and you want to take a right on Farm during this period and you had a do not enter?
Right.
So the fear is that the queue on Fox Hill at 109 would just,
Back up.
but don't we think some of those people would actually try to find a completely different route?
I believe the application that most people are nowadays using, especially during the morning hours, would. But what is that route going to be? So that's what I drew an example that it could perhaps take you down Gay Street, take a left on 109, a right on Hartford, a right off of High Rock onto.
Right, but it could also force them back onto Washington Street and head towards 128 that way. Like, we don't really know.
Perhaps,
right?
yeah.
I mean, we don't.
Right.
That's something that is always going to be changing. You don't know.
Yeah, no, I get
That's
it, I get it.
That's the difficulty of doing this. And it's not that we disagree that there isn't a volume issue during this specific time frame. It's just, how can you be creative enough without doing something
I mean, the number's a little astounding. It's not, in 90 minutes, 330 is,
it's a lot.
that's just one steady stream. And what's the comparable on High Rock?
High Rock is significantly higher. On a given day, the peak hour in the morning and the peak hour in the afternoon combined is essentially 700.
In the same amount of time?
Yes.
Wow, okay. I mean, we've talked about this. I mean, I've always maintained there's a lot of history that's involved in this. Westwood has historically been hesitant to begin trying to manage, right? If we put a one-way here, we're just going to create a problem over here, right? But I think there's a long-standing policy, right, wrong, or indifferent, where we've not favored 109 strong enough. I have always felt, we've talked about this, Ken.
Yes.
I think the light cycles on 109 should be longer, encouraging more people to stay on 109 instead of jumping off. And so that, I think that's got to be part of the discussion. At the end of the day, the better flow we can get on 109, the better quality of life in the neighborhoods.
You're absolutely right. And that's the whole thing about the adaptive signal system. It's going to essentially, provide a real-time traffic volume queuing that measures both, actually, 109 and the side street. And the system that we have today is very rigid. You set a time for the main line, it follows that. And you set a time, and you try not to, penalize the side street as much. But in the case of the adaptive, it actually measure your volume, both your main line and side street, 24/7.
Right. But I mean, in your experience, we have a group of people who feel like their quality of life is impacted, looking for some relief. I mean, what have you seen? What can you offer? Any thoughts, suggestions? If we're really, it sounds like we're resistant to the one way, right? What are our other options?
I know we have discussed all the options that was applied at other part of town. The speeding concern, which there aren't, really speeding.
Right.
Which speed hump has worked in the case of, High Rock. And there are other features where we try to discourage,
Right.
traffic from
Right.
driving through the neighborhood. And it's to make it difficult to get to and trying to, it's lane marking, make it look narrow and all that. And, but I think they were concerned that, the marking, it's just lane line, it's a passive way of, dealing with the problem. So, so I think, currently Pleasant Valley is about 24, 25 foot, width. So it's not very wide and it's not very narrow. So it's just about your typical, residential road.
So I do think, Todd, what that island at Farm in Pleasant Valley, I believe helped.
Yeah.
But I do think, one of the things that people have spoken to me about, and I can't remember the name of it, where Pleasant Valley and Farm meet, and then there's a little cul-de-sac.
It's Conifer.
Conifer.
Yeah.
So at the corner of where Conifer Farm and Pleasant Valley meet, there's a big bus stop.
Okay.
So I think my sense is that people are coming down Gay, taking that turn coming on Fox Hill, turning onto Farm, and it's a soft shoulder.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if we curb
Look at
that,
intersection of-
and then you have the island up ahead. It's kind of two impediments that would help.
At the intersection of Fox Hill and Farm.
And Farm.
Narrow that down.
Narrow that down. It's a soft turn right now, so
Yeah.
I think people are taking that at a high speed.
Yeah, I'd
That
have
seems
to
to be a
look at it
theme I
and
hear
see-
from a lot of people, is that, and then the kids are at the bottom of that hill at the bus stop, and that's driving a lot of the
Yeah. Yeah.
concern. Just
And
a
maybe there
thought.
should be some discussion with the school department on their bus stops or with the neighborhood.
Yeah,
Because that's obviously a big factor.
Yeah.
Safety is important.
right. And this, like I said earlier, we're trying to be creative, but to what point? I think, like Ken said, we've used lane width reduction to help with and aid with speed issues.
That's not the
But
issue.
that's not the issue, and quite frankly, to go in there with white paint and create two fog lines in a neighborhood
No, I'm
like
talking
that.
about a hard curb.
No, I know what you're saying too. That would help with the bus location for sure, but with their primary concerns of volume cutting through there, I think we just have to take a good look at
109.
109. Like I said, it's like the last thing that we've yet to exhaust from an effort standpoint, is that extra lane, the additional lane up there. And as Ken's looking at it currently with his staff right now, I think that would resolve a lot of these issues. And I think at that point, it would probably be a safe bet to say these volume counts in all these neighborhoods would go down. It could only go down because people would be more apt to stay on 109 and not cut all over the
People want to
place.
be moving.
However, if that's the case and everybody's on 109, now you're doubling the
Just added
you don't
350
know.
cars,
But
right.
in theory,
Exactly.
so in the meantime, Ken is looking at this. In the real meantime, I'd like to be able to provide the residents with
Something.
something. So, and to be honest with you, you guys know me, very rarely am I at a loss of words to say anything or ideas or try to be creative. I want something that has some merit behind it. I don't want to just come up with something to say, yeah, this will solve it.
Yeah, it does nothing, yeah.
No, I agree.
So,
So does that leave us?
yeah.
I know, I hate to say this, but
Well, I think John's had put out a couple of important suggestions, or at least the one with the intersection at Fox Hill and Farm to look at, and then I think figuring out if there's anything that can be done further at the Pleasant Valley, Farm Lane, Conifer, but that's maybe still small, but still worth looking into.
right.
I think the island that we put in at Dover and Conant is hugely productive, and then further into the neighborhood there, where cars couldn't do wide turns and keep it forced a slowdown. And it's been very effective, because
Yep.
otherwise you're up in the middle of an island on a curb, and most people don't want to ruin their cars on the way to work, so.
Another suggestion would be to put a sign like we did in the neighborhood of Canton Street, Fox Hill, Canton, Forbes, and Everett Street on all the entrances, so there'd just be one entrance into the Farm Lane area. We tell people that this is a residential area. You announce it as they go in. And I think it says residential area and drive slowly or something like that.
But the issue's not speed. That's
But
the
no,
whole-
I understand, but the speed went down by 5 to a little bit more than 5, but also the volume went down by 10% after the University Avenue was done. So if we introduce the fact that it's a residential neighborhood, people will pay attention a little bit more. I'd also like to ask Ken, on the license plate, I didn't know you had done a license plate survey. Did you trace it back to the residences?
No, he did not.
No, we just did from A to B, you know, where they,
Because that would give-
where they come
that would
from.
be-
We don't want the
that would be a good-
ACLU
what's
calling.
that?
We don't want the ACLU calling us.
No, but what you do, you turn it over, and you just simply get the town that they're coming from, and so you can map out where, you're not getting the names, you're getting just the location
Zip code.
where they're
Right.
coming from. I've seen those
We
studies
could-
before.
Yes, we, certainly, Officer Sakari can pin down on
Right.
the registration where they,
What that gives you is, it give you a track as to where people are coming from. My sense is that more are coming from Manhattan Street up to Thatcher and then down, because I travel that way myself.
yeah.
And I see them
People
coming
are
along that
doing
way.
whatever they can on whatever day that gets them where they're going and moving. The streets are all getting
Yeah.
backed up.
So, what's the possibility of, I don't know, stop signs and making them come to a complete stop, and at least stopping the traffic so that now it's no longer insightful to be hitting
Right.
3 stop signs as you go through Pleasant Valley or, Fox Hill? I
Yeah.
mean, there's only, with Fox Hill, there's only one, intersection to put the stop sign. But at Pleasant Valley, you have at least 3.
Yeah.
And Farm Lane, you have at least 1, to slow them down. I don't know. I think to deter them is the stop sign, and then if you get a 4-way stop, no one can figure out who's next, and so it delays the traffic a little bit longer and a little
Right.
bit longer.
Right.
And then
Less
Waze,
appealing.
Waze is going to say that's not the best route you should go, because now traffic is already backed up.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I hate stop signs, don't get me wrong, but if that's what the neighborhood needs to try to get people to almost be stuck
Not
there.
find it attractive.
Yeah, not find
Right,
it
that's the
attractive
problem.
anymore.
Yeah.
Then 109, even though it takes,
Look into it.
About the same
Consider
time.
it. You should be talking to the neighbor.
I mean, what other options did you hear at the meeting?
It was more or less sidewalk installations, and we went over the cost, obviously, of that. The major ask was the 7 to 8:30 a.m. shutdown.
Stop sign.
And does that make sense from an yeah, but from a overall perspective of the dealings with every,
Well, you know what it gets to? It gets, as long as it's not in my neighborhood, that's what it gets down to.
correct?
But I do think, I'm often amazed when I leave in the morning, when I see, I'm heading Gay Street towards Washington Street, and to see the volume of cars coming into Westwood, it makes no sense to me. I don't understand why they're driving towards the congested area, but I suspect these are the people who then do these cut-throughs,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we want to entice a way to change the behavior that they stay on Washington Street and head into 128 in Dedham,
Which has more capacity.
which has more capacity.
Right.
So, I mean, this is an easy cut-through. If you look at it from a map, it makes perfect sense, right? So I think you have some people who want to say something.
Well, it's not a public hearing, that's the only thing that we just brought Todd in, and you guys will have to continue to speak with Todd and the consultant, because we're not ready to we're not making any decisions tonight, we just wanted information from Todd, and let him hear from us and go back to the drawing board or back to the board and decide, which way, what would make more sense. Some people are gonna complain about, stop sign in front of their house, but if the neighborhood, together is saying, all right, let's try them, even if we put them up temporarily and see how it works. We've done that before.
Yeah, we did that with High Rock and
Hartford,
Hartford.
yeah.
Right,
And tested it out for,
3 months or so.
it wasn't that long, but it was a good test. Remember that with Bob O'Donnell?
Yeah.
And it ended up being a permanent thing.
It has to.
I can't imagine it not being there now.
I think just the warning is that if Sakad were here, and I think Ken will,
Yeah,
it has to meet warrants. Right?
And if I may, Mr. Chair, I'd like to comment on the stop sign.
I know.
There are regulations by the state and federal highway, the applications of stop sign. And, there are communities that have done exactly what you have just described. And the research has indicated that a stop sign, where they are implemented, that doesn't meet the requirements based on the state and the federal highway guideline, can potentially create safety concerns. And a good example is one of the guidelines, rule of thumb is for an intersection to have always stop, trying to stop people, is that all approaches volume has to be about the same. And the reason being is that because whether it's the main line or the sight line, for example, if you are implementing a always stop at an intersection where the volume proportion are not the same, so essentially 80% of the time, if someone comes to a stop sign and they would look to the left or right, knowing that there's going to be no car 80% of the time, well, what's going to happen?
Gonna roll through.
Yes, that's exactly what, and all it takes is just one person to roll through, and then there's a car that comes along and, they'll get into an accident. So that's been proven.
I know, but we
unsafe.
can't help those drivers
Right.
if they don't stop.
And your
I know.
intuition on these, based on your professional experience, is that fair to put you on the spot, or would you rather just look into it?
We'll take another look at it, but based on the count that we have done, the traffic volume, your volume are very, they're not proportional at
Yeah,
all.
they're coming from one
But
direction.
is there a
Yeah.
stop sign at the bottom of Farm Lane at Conifer?
No,
No.
No.
nope.
Or no-
But with
no
these
stop signs
volumes,
in
you
there?
couldn't justify a stop sign there?
No, because it's not the same traffic coming out of Conifer, is what he's
Right.
saying.
Right.
The problem is that this is only a problem for 1.5 hours, so you get all the other hours of the day
So-
that you don't have any
Exactly.
volume.
Right. Well, that's why they pay you the big bucks, Ken. So.
But I would say to the residents here anyway, we did receive some emails. We have them. I would encourage people to continue to send them.
Yep,
And we'll
absolutely.
continue to talk. And I think we should, at an upcoming meeting, get some more recommendations from you guys. I would start with increasing the time on 109.
I think that's probably right. That's
So,
it.
Todd, you'll go back to that for just a second.
One more
Why-
time, John?
Why 2020? What's the delay?
Lag.
Why does it take
109.
so long?
We're in the process of design right now, figuring out all the utilities and just the process by which you have to adhere to the state's dot this I and cross this T, then and when.
Yeah,
So we're hopeful that it's, earliest spring of 2020.
Yes, right. It's a process because this is funded by the state, the
Can our-
transportation.
Can our
and-
neighbors who, use it as much as we do, contribute? And I
Medfield,
mean, yeah,
Millis,
Medfield,
Medway.
yeah, Dover, right
That
down the
was,
road.
that was the sell that we had. The state's funding the entire project, but that was the discussion that we had with them, that we're suffering. We're at the end of a rope where everybody's ready to jump off the rope and
Right.
jump on 128. We're the last link in that rope, a link in
Maybe
the
we
chain.
should send them pictures like we did of the East Street Bridge and,
But as part of,
We'll
as
have to
part,
record videos, though.
as
but-
part of the review you're gonna
Okay,
do
whatever.
now, can we look at the bow tie at the end of 109 when you're heading up to the on-ramps? It's 2, 1, 2.
Right.
How short are we to create, to keep the 4 lanes
That's what we're
consistent?
looking at right now.
That's-
Okay,
that's
because
exactly what we're
that's,
looking
that
at.
would be important.
So if
for
that can
planning.
be
It's only like 100 yards, isn't it?
restriped.
It's not a lot.
It's only like 100 yards.
It is, but if that can be restriped with the existing footprint and pavement that's there, width that's
without
there,
without takings and everything.
without takings and, exactly. If it can't,
Yeah. I
it
think-
would still, if it can't be done, I still think it, whether it's under me or
Or
someone,
taken.
I think at some point in time, it should be pursued by the town. And
But I think it's important, we know and the community knows, how short are we?
Yep.
How close could we get to
Right.
doing something?
Mhm.
Because I think that's always been just the unanswered question, we don't
Sure.
know.
And also, who owns the property,
correct.
right?
Yep,
So I think some of it should be near the
Yeah.
Fox Hill
yep, yep,
area.
exactly.
And what we're looking at is only 3 lanes, 2 in the outbound direction
Right.
and 1 coming
Right.
back in.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah,
traffic
because it's
handle
one all the way
AM.
down from
It's-
there.
It's
anyway.
the AM that's the worst
Right,
problem.
right.
You gotta figure though, with the adaptive signals along with that, and that's what we tried to convey to the residents too, and we said the same thing to some other inquiring neighborhoods, that it'd be a shame to come in and put all these features and all this infrastructure when you're right on the cusp of having a major project go through that will help, and then if we do pursue the extra lane.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Thing is, as much as time flies, it seems to
Exactly.
take a long time to get there, so.
I think traffic is the biggest quality of life complaint.
In the greater Boston area.
But it's
Well,
simple to understand, and
but
I
it's a-
tell
it's
people
a
this all
major
the
point
time.
westward.
When I grew up, our family had 1 car, right? Right now I have 4 in my driveway. So it's not a matter of,
Sure.
it's just a matter of people, having more cars in their family, and they don't have the space to go, so.
More cars and more infrastructure all the way down to
Right.
Millis, Medway, everything, every subdivision that goes up, it's more vehicles coming this way.
Right,
So it's,
so.
All
Well,
So
good
2
luck.
weeks continued.
Yes.
We've given you a mountain of things to work on, but
So we'll see
do
you
the
at
best
future
you
meeting.
can, and we'll try to come up with something.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So I did see,
Thanks, Todd.
do we need Joan to come up? Joan? We need,
On what? Oh, the health director's retirement.
right? I will be happy to. Well, I assume, as the HR person, that you might want to be involved in this. Hello, Joan.
Hello.
So, we have heard that Linda Shea, our health director for the town of Westwood, has decided to retire. After 23 years, she's informed us that her last day will be January 2nd, 2019. Linda has diligently and professionally performed her responsibilities since taking office on September 5th, 1995. She has greatly improved the efficacy of application and plan reviews and overwhelming several changes. She has done a great job, including with our annual flu clinics, our rabies clinics, Westwood Day, and of course the inspection of all the restaurants in town. But based on her retirement, it looks like we'll need to fill that position. So I assume, like I said, I assumed you would be here because you would be part of the hiring process, as well as Nora and Mike. And anyone have any questions or statements?
Board of Health, what will their
Board of
role
Health
be?
would be the board that we would work with. We would want them to participate in the appointment process, feel comfortable with the person, because
That's going to be their boss, yes?
Yeah, I mean, the boss is right here. The Nora's her boss because she's the head of the department, but the Board of Health is the one that she reports to and works with on policy issues, on compliance issues, on matters like that. So we absolutely want the Board of Health participating in this process.
Okay.
All right, I move that the board authorize the posting and the filling of the health director position and that the Community and Economic Development Director work with the town administrator to recruit, screen, and fill the position.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Joan.
Thanks, Joan.
You're welcome. Happy to help.
Heavy lifting
I
on that
just
one,
need
huh?
someone to sit in the seat, that's all.
I'm right there.
All right, next we have the request for extension of hours for Black Friday. Nora, come on up. So far, I see that only Target has requested so far, which is interesting because I see that they, according to our notes, they wanted to open their stores at midnight and remain open until 10 p.m. Now, I heard that they were going to open at 5 o'clock, close at midnight, and then open again the next morning at 6 o'clock is what I've heard them advertising. So it's interesting to see that ours is different, so.
Yes, and it was different last year as well.
Right.
Most Targets changed their procedure last year for the first time, but our Target in Westwood did not. They kept the procedure of opening at midnight and
Okay.
going through the next day. We have their crowd control plan, which is looking to do the same thing they've done. I think this is the third year in a row. The plan has been reviewed by Chief Silva. He's approved it, required, I believe, 2 detail officers.
Okay. Because that's what I was looking for. I didn't see a detail, but you say it's there?
It's in the
Okay.
report.
It is, okay.
I don't think they call them detail.
I don't know what they
I
call them,
think
like, they
I
didn't call
think
them
they have
police
another-
details, I know
No,
that.
they,
Okay.
fine.
So they'll have 2?
Yes.
So what, and Nora, so what are their hours going to be? Because I don't have it.
I have it as
From 12 a.m.,
Right.
let's see.
12 midnight to 6 a.m. as
Right.
part of their special event.
Okay. So, you ready for motion? There's 2 motions. Let's do them separately.
Hold on,
Yes, oh,
hold
Nance
on.
has,
She's
And they
looking
call them,
something up, and I have a question.
2 third-party guards / off-duty support officers. Detail.
Support.
They just have a different way of referring to them.
okay. So are they Westwood police officers or?
They
They'll
don't have
be,
to be.
according to
Whoever
the
they
usual
think, right?
procedure, they'll be Massachusetts
Yeah,
police
whoever's
officers.
available.
Okay. All right.
Any issues in past years? I remember this was a big deal when we first
Yes,
did it.
none
We've
at all.
never had anything
None at all. It's
like
been
it.
very well organized. There've been no concerns the last 2 years.
Okay.
So this will be the 3rd time they're doing it, and we hope it goes
It looks like they're
just
going to
as
be
well.
selling a lot of Apple products because they have their own separate line for Apple products.
And last year, we also had GameStop, which
Right.
submitted for a license.
Yes.
Your meeting fell a little earlier this year, and so we won't be surprised if we get a request for GameStop, but because your next meeting
Is
isn't
after.
until the 26th, we're requesting that you grant approve a process by which the chair can approve licenses if we
Okay.
receive them from other businesses, as long as they submit a crowd control report and it's approved by the chief of police.
And the
Okay,
town
yes.
administrator, I would think, would be, Mike, you should approve, if any others come in, if we have a procedure, it should require your approval, meaning you should at least let us know.
Yeah.
So if we
okay.
have any questions, just to make
And
sure
the
we
sign
cover our
off would be the
bases.
chair.
But what's nice is we have a history, there haven't been any issues.
None at all.
You know, everybody
Yeah.
has a handle on how to manage this, so that's
And it
good.
would, if there was another one in the shopping area, which is likely we would have it, you know,
Right.
we can have, we have multiple police officers down the
Right.
area to
Yeah.
control it, so.
Okay.
Okay, I move that the board grant a 1-day permit for extended hours from midnight to 6 a.m. on Friday,
23rd.
November 23rd, for Target located at 221 University Ave.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And I would further move that the board allow administrative approval process by the police chief and the town administrator for other applications for extended hours on November 23rd, 2018.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great.
Okay, moving along to old business. No pun intended there, Tom. but-
Oh, poor Tom.
All right, Town Council Legal Services. So we brought this up at our last meeting. We had some information provided to us, and we've been provided with more information that Mr. McCusker is retiring, and we are left with trying to at least fill some of Tom's shoes by the either outside counsel or in-house counsel. So that's the information we have. Mike, you provided good information to us. Thank you. And so we have, we've been provided the cons and pros of both, and given a list of other communities who are both use in-house counsel and external counsel or special counsel in certain things, so. I think I made my position clear last time that I think rather than rush into it, I was willing to at least try special counsel or outside counsel and see how it went financially. But that's not, seems to be, that it's the least efficient way, from what I can see, although it looks as though, my question, I guess, is on the FY18 actual, that include both outside counsel and
It's the
Tom's
total-
salary as the
it's
total?
legal budgets in each community, right?
Okay.
So, Mike, I'm looking at the proposed action tonight. This would be you to advertise for either a small firm.
Well, maybe we just
Or-
advertise generally. I mean, I've indicated here that the pros and cons of the three approaches.
Yeah.
So there's the large firm, does pretty much everything you got. There's a smaller firm that acts like the individual,
Right.
where they do specific services that they're comfortable with, that we're comfortable with them doing, and that applies to the individual. And when we have more complicated issues, we go outside for special counsel. And what we don't do right now is we don't have town council overseeing the work of the
Yep.
special counsel. And probably that would be a good idea going forward to incorporate that if that works out. The issue would be to basically advertise sort of a broad scope,
Right.
broader scope than we currently have, and just see what the proposals are. Have a small committee made up of individuals, so somebody from the Board of Selectmen, and we'll find out other people that are involved in it, to interview those committees, to listen to what the proposals are, and to get a sense of what it is that we want to fine tune it. Like we did years ago with Tom, that wasn't a practice that we had and many other communities had. But when we thought about it and worked it out, it worked very fine for a number
Yeah.
for these years. And so this would be the same thing. You take this opportunity to explore the different entities that could provide the service and see which one we feel the most comfortable with, which one matches our need and the way we do business.
So you could essentially do an RFP or something, or
Yeah,
a
it'd be,
request for,
yeah, we wouldn't want to call it an RFP
applicants?
because it's not quite that, but it would be like we do with a job description when we
Yeah.
advertise for a job description. There's general idea of
Little
what we're
different than-
looking for, and then ask people to give us proposals. The RFP oftentimes would specify the scope,
Right.
very detailed.
yeah, and we are.
Because it's based on price, so you have to do it that way. we'd want to keep it open because
So it's an application process.
application process, yeah.
That, I think that
Similar
would
to-
be good, to give us a sense of who might be out there that would be interested, I think, because we don't have to commit to anything right now, would give us some advantage
Yeah.
to
We
find
do
out more
have-
information.
And just I'll remind the board, we do have coverage. Dan Bailey has indicated, who acts as special counsel on our development, has indicated
That'd be great.
availability to back us up over a period of time.
I
while
just,
we're
I
working,
think,
so.
I think the verbiage of the board's motion is important. I don't think that you're going to advertise an opening for an attorney and get a small firm to propose the work. I think
yeah.
it's an RFP. And if an individual attorney wants to apply or respond, they can respond. But
Yeah,
I don't think you can do both. The proposed action says advertise an opening for local individual attorney and small town attorney law firm.
Well, we can customize that, you
Yeah.
don't have to be,
This wasn't meant to be exactly the way we would word it. The idea was, yeah, you'd advertise first, you'd get some proposals back in, then you'd have the committee, the selection committee, narrow down the individuals, listen to the proposals, and come up with a scope that we think is most appropriate. And maybe different scopes depending on who we decide, who we're thinking of hiring, and then have the board interview, because ultimately it's the Board of Selectmen that would select, so the whole board would interview the candidates that the selection committee would bring forward.
But I think I think the motion from us, I think, is that we authorize you to go forward and seek legal services.
and then I can just,
And then,
I think we should have a process with a committee.
No,
Because
no,
I think
I-
we can get people,
I'm not,
okay,
I wasn't saying we don't do then 2
Okay.
and 3.
okay.
But, I mean, I think you can incorporate it either way and just say either individuals or firms interested in providing,
But I think he should do that at that level.
yeah. Well, I mean, how he
Have a
phrases
committee
it will be
work
up
on
to
it.
him, yeah.
Yeah.
Because so often in our hiring of top staff, top-level staff, we have a committee, we get some community members that might be experts, and we have the advantage of somebody like Dan Bailey, who knows us well, who I know would, he wouldn't be able to apply for the job. I don't think that would be in his
That's not what he-
consideration.
he's
We'd have
basically said he
people-
has no interest in
Okay,
it,
so we'd have
so-
people on it who know the town, know our needs, get guided by the Board of Selectmen and Mike Gillette, because I would think somebody from the Selectmen should be on the committee,
Yeah.
just like we have when we've done the police chief and fire chief.
Right.
And we figure out who's out there and what seems to be the best fit for the town. I think Mike has it right.
So I think tonight the motion is that we authorize the town administrator to go forward and seek legal services and come back to us at our next meeting with a recommendation of a screening committee.
Oh, I would think the committee should work with him now.
Yeah,
Okay?
to
But are
draft-
we,
to
The
draft the
scope of what we
language
put out there.
on the scope of what we're
who's
putting out.
appointing this committee? We are? Okay. But who's on the committee?
I'll volunteer.
Okay. Is it just you, a committee of one? Who else?
Uh,
Should the HR director? I mean,
Well,
I don't think we should be winging this at our meeting.
Why
I
not?
think
If
we
you-
need a
if you're gonna end
proposal
up
from
talking, you
the
need to be there.
town.
Well, I wouldn't mind being on it
I think,
either, Mike.
I think, honestly,
I don't-
if Tom wanted to sit, I wouldn't be objecting to Tom sitting.
So I'm
too.
going to suggest
Okay.
that we,
I think we go back to your first motion.
I think that we go back to my first
Oh,
motion,
gee.
which is that we authorize you to initiate the process, and on November 26th, you come forward to us with a recommendation of who is on the selection committee. Do I have a second?
Second,
All those in favor? Aye.
aye.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Next, we have the selection of the steering committee members
For,
for the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. And we have 18 applicants who have submitted, Abby and Nora, and Dave, I guess. Am I guessing? I'm guessing. Tell me if I'm wrong. Yeah, you come up too, Dave. Well, I think as part of the planning board chair, you should probably be up here.
So at your last meeting, we had gone over a list. At that time, we had 21 potential candidates for the steering committee. We're now down to 18. 3 of those candidates didn't complete the application process. They were asked to fill out an application, submit a writing sample, and a resume. And 3 of the candidates, 2 of the candidates did not complete it, and 1 candidate withdrew. They decided that they just didn't have time to help with the comprehensive plan. So that leaves us 18 members, 18 candidates that are requesting appointment to this committee. At our last meeting, we also, I shared with you a suggested list of pairings of individuals to work on specific elements of the plan. And you have before you a revised list that assigns positions for the 18 members. In most cases, the members were given an element to work on that they specifically requested in their application. I think there may be 1 or 2 instances where a different committee was assigned. I have additional copies.
Yeah, I don't think I have
I
that
got
one,
it.
do I?
There you go. It's in your folder. Looks like that.
And just as
Oh, there it is, sorry.
got it, you got
Last
it.
one, of
Thank you.
course.
a refresher, the open space and recreation element is really far along.
It is.
It's a matter of taking it into the comprehensive plan.
Yes, our
Sphere.
consultant has completed the draft on that, and the Open Space and Recreation Planning Committee will be meeting on November 15th to give that draft one last look before sending it to the planning board for consideration on December 11th. So that plan will be complete before the comprehensive plan gets underway. In addition, we have a housing production plan that's under development by the housing partnership and by the housing agent. That also will be completed before the comprehensive plan gets well underway.
So I guess my first question though would be, so you've given the, I don't know, pairings, if you will, for lack of a better term. Have you reached out to any of the members and said, this is what we thought about, this is the committee and we're pairing you with so-and-so, just to see if there'll be a shuffle again? Or if
I have
somebody
not.
says,
So
okay,
what we're asking the Board of Selectmen to do is appoint
all 18 of them?
representatives to the steering commission to work on that element. Appoint
Okay.
them, for instance, as the land use element steering committee member, as a housing element steering committee member, to give assignments. And most of the applicants requested specific assignments when they submitted their application. Some of them requested just one, and others requested 3 or 4, or said, I'll be on anything at all. So everyone here, I think with 2 exceptions, is placed on the committee that they requested.
Okay.
You wouldn't have talked to them about alternatives
We have
yet because
not,
we
no.
haven't had the discussion. So you don't know if they'll all stay, but probably they will. This is great. It's a great list of volunteers, a lot of talent.
There is quite a
Yes.
bit of talent.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel the same way. I guess there's a part of me that I just want to be sure that, in the future, it's not a given that everybody that comes forward we appoint, right? I mean, there will be a point in time, I think, where we'll
Correct.
be needing to thin the application process. I just think we really lucked out on this one in that we received a group of people who all bring so much forward. So we want to tap all that potential. So as far as the recommended assignments, I mean, I really defer to you and Abby. I don't. It's unfortunate if 2 people aren't getting, they're volunteers. If we're not putting them where they want, are we sure they're okay with where they are? It's the only. I just want to make sure of that.
That's-
But
That was my question.
Right.
But-
Yeah, so they would have an opportunity to decline if they're not interested in
Okay.
going forward in that area.
And the only other question I had, and again, I defer to you all for a lot of this, but do we have a husband and wife on one of the?
We do.
Okay.
We do. They asked to work together.
Okay.
And they asked specifically, those were 2 people who only asked for that one
Okay.
element.
that's their
We
area
had a
of
couple of
specialty.
That's
others.
a specialty,
Yes.
so.
But otherwise,
Others asked for 3 or 4 different categories. And we tried wherever possible to give them the first one on their list.
right. And if you didn't get what you had asked for, I mean, you're welcome to attend the meetings.
Yes, and,
participate, right.
right, so while we're recommending that steering committee members be appointed for a specific element, they are encouraged to participate in
In all
all
the
elements,
elements.
but would be responsible for actually writing that
Right.
element.
Perfect. I'm good.
Dave, do you have any comments?
Well, I think it's great that we set out to get 2 per area. We got what we
Yeah,
were looking
right.
for.
How lucky is that, huh?
And we have, the planning board members will be associated with, there'll be liaisons to each of these sections. So there's additional, as other people want to be involved in the process, they are welcome to do it as well. Because I think this is a bunch of doers here. So these are people who are gonna get down and do the work, and it doesn't preclude anybody else from being involved. So I think it's a great.
And I think it's important too, for those watching at home, this is a rewrite of an existing document.
It is, it's an update, and now
So-
the document is 18 years old,
No,
so it's a
right.
substantial update.
Right.
But they're not starting from scratch.
Right.
And it will, every discussion will be on an element level at a planning board meeting in public session, and anyone is welcome to participate.
Great. Okay, anything else?
I think this has worked out very well, and very appreciative of the people who've stepped forward.
Yeah, I agree. So, So the proposed action I have says for the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board members to appoint the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee, but I can't make a
We
motion.
do that. We do that
It's
anyway.
just the Board of
just us.
Selectmen.
Right, so I'm going to move that the Board of Selectmen appoint those listed and concur with the recommended assignments.
We should probably read them.
Read the names?
Yeah.
Okay. Recommended appointments are Jack Wigan, Chair, Steve Olenoff, Vice Chair, Charles Donahue, Nancy Donahue, Phil Aramo, Paula Jacobson, Pam Kane, Peter Kane, Trevor Lobenstein, Sheila Hanley Longval, Janica Maderi, Peter Neville, John Rogers, Phil Shapiro, Barbara Shea, Tom Vitti, Linda Walsh, Kate Wynn. The recommended assignments are Land Use Element, Jack Wigan and Linda Walsh, Town Centers Element, Kate Wynn and John Rogers, Housing Element, Barbara Shea, Sheila Hanley Longval, Economic Development element, Peter Neville and Phil Shapiro. Natural and Cultural Resources element, Nancy Donahue and Janissa Maderi. Community Facilities element, Tom Vitti and Phil Aramo. Open Space and Recreation, Charles Donahue and Paula Jacobson. Transportation element, Steve Olenoff and Trevor Lobenstein. The Resilience and Sustainability, Phil Shapiro, Peter Kane, and Pam Kane. An introduction written by Jack Wigan and Steve Olenoff, and the implementation to the town staff.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You're off and running.
Don't go far, Dave.
Don't go far, Dave. You're staying right here, Dave.
You have fellow members here, too?
We do. Debbie's here.
Brian?
Chris?
Chris?
Mike?
Got the whole
Brian,
board
come
here.
on up.
Yeah.
This is
Don't
kind
be
of a
shy.
joint meeting, so you might as well come on up, Deb.
Have a seat.
You should formally convene a
Yes.
meeting of the planning board.
All right, we have all 5 members are present, so I'll call this joint meeting of the Planning Board and Board of Selectmen to order. Noting the time is 9:07 PM.
Okay, so we're having a joint meeting at this point in time to appoint 2 new associate members to the planning board. Town's charter allows for up to, the appointment of up to 2 associate members to serve on elected boards, including the planning board. The associate members can be designated by the planning board chair to sit on the board in the case of absence, inability to act, a conflict of interest on the part of any elected member of the board, or in the event of a vacancy. Associate members are appointed for a 3-year term by a majority of the vote of the attending members of the boards. That would be both the planning board and the board of selectmen. The charter calls for the associate members shall be appointed for 3-year rotating terms. It
What
was
does
at-
rotating term mean? They should be,
Yeah, well.
3-year terms.
They get chairs that spin? I don't know.
No, no.
The associate members have a 3-year term appointed by the majority of the members of the boards, and it calls, you close advertisement. There was an advertisement. It was on the website on or about August 29th, asking interested candidates to apply by September 29th. We have 2. Imagine that. We're lucky again, 2. We have Mr. Steve Rasky. Mr. Rasky has been on the, resided in Westwood for 30 years, and recently one of the planning board associate members from 2015 through June of 2018. We also have Mr. Steve Olenoff, who has resided in Westwood for 42 years and served for 27 years, 9 terms as a planning board member. So those are our 2 members who have applied. And so this is a joint session. Would Mr. Olenoff or Mr. Rafsky like to make a statement to our members of the boards? We're offering. You don't have to, but we're offering.
Only that if so appointed, I'd be happy to continue to serve. That would be great.
Okay. I assume you're going to say the same, Steve?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. I think you know the both of us. We've been on the planning board together for quite a while and at different times, so certainly we both are able to do the job.
Okay, so we need a nomination of our 2 candidates.
I'm happy to nominate both Steve Rafsky and Steve Olenoff.
Are we going to discuss this matter before?
Well, we can make the motion and then discuss, so I'll second.
Okay.
Any other nominations can be accepted as well.
Any other nominations for the planning board at this point in time? Seeing none, we have a discussion on the motion.
I think it might be helpful, Abby, if you could describe a little bit about what you did to promote this and kind of, if there's any background you want to kind of quickly go over. I know Mr. Walsh sort of covered that, but if it might be helpful to hear.
Thanks, sure. The planning board associate position was posted at the end of August. It was posted for 1 month on our website. It had also appeared on the planning board's agendas and gone out the e-notification through email on the town's listserv and posted on the town and planning board's Facebook page that we were looking for associate planning board members. This is new to the charter. I think about 4 years ago, where we had done this in 2015, and the most recent term expired this past June. So that's when the planning board was looking for opening up the positions again in August. And then a little bit more about the associate member position. This position, once appointed, the members are associate members, and then they're only called up to serve at the discretion of the planning board chair. So it would be up to the planning board chair if one of the 5 elected planning board members, if they could not serve for whatever reason, usually if it were an absence, conflict of interest, or other extended absence, or for example, if their term was ending, when an application came in, it would be at the chair's discretion if the associate member would be elected to call up to be served on a specific application and only for that specific item.
So Abby, give us an idea of, since you've been there, how often has an associate member been called to sit?
We've only used the associate members a few times in the past. I think maybe 3 times over the last 3 years. One was for a subdivision application that came in when we had members' terms expiring. We knew a subdivision is a large application that usually continues over multiple meetings, and it would not be completed with the same members, so we called up the associate members. And then another time, I think there was it was a special permit application. Special permits are the primary purpose for the associate members because those require a supermajority, 4 affirmative votes for an approval. So usually an applicant would not want to go forward if they did not have all 5 members. That was during our planning board earth material movement special permit at that time, where one of the members wasn't available, an associate member was available and was called by the chair for that one evening hearing.
Okay. Anyone else wish to be heard?
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah, so Brian Gorman. Yeah, I understand the concept of of this position. The reservation that I have for it is that you're appointing a position to an elected board. So for this type of a position, since the planning board is so important, I feel that it should be an elected position as done in other towns, such as Dover, which has done it that way. I think for one of the issues has to do with for the continuance that you were speaking of. I would almost feel that in some of those situations it might be worthwhile to wait until those new members are on board. I think at that point they brought on two associate members at that time. So now you have 2 non-elected positions there. But I also think that if we do move forward, I do feel it should be elected. If we do move forward in this, I think that we should open the application back up, because I even recently heard of residents who were interested in it, but they didn't hear about it. So we could use similar advertising as done for the comprehensive plan. The fact that we didn't get any applicants from that, I find strange. Both applicants we received prior to that listing. So I find that a bit odd. And it was probably because it went out late August, people not in the fall swing of things.
If I could, the ad was posted for 1 month. It went out, it was posted on August 29th, so we said 30 days, which happened to be September 29th. And I think the 2 applicants that you received, I think was on September 28th.
And Mr. Gorman, while I may agree or disagree with what you say about the associate members, our charter calls for the fact that they are appointed and not elected, so we don't really have much control over making them elected positions without redoing the town charter. So I hear what you're saying.
I understand that.
And there might be many that agree with you,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, the charter is what it is, and we are stuck with that. So, any other comments? Yes. Yes, Ms. Conant.
Debbie Conian, in regards to the charter, what does it say about if there was an absence or someone exited? What does the associate member do then?
Well,
Are they put in place, or are they put up for re-election at the next annual election?
So I think, and Tom, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what happened was the the planning board chair would appoint someone in that temporary position until the next election, if I'm not mistaken. Would
So
be
I-
the-
We do.
We do?
It's a
So-
joint, it's another joint.
Another joint meeting.
So I,
And it can be anyone who's not an associate member at that point in time.
And
It
we
can be
can't
anyone.
put an associate member up for election. It's still a personal choice to run.
Does it go to election though? Because
It would
So
be a-
Debbie,
Each,
for
I-
instance, if, let's say somebody just came into a 3-year term, and after a year, they're no longer able to serve for whatever reason. They decide in December, before an April election, maybe they serve for 6 months, and they say in December, come the next election, I can't continue to serve, so the position's opened up. We could appoint somebody from December until May, at the end of town meeting, but that position would open up for election and somebody would run for the
2
2
years.
years remaining on the term.
so they does go to election.
So it's at the discretion of the town. You don't have to appoint somebody to fill it for those few months. The associate positions would give the planning board access to somebody and say, why go through the process? We've got somebody who's knowledgeable, who's right here. It would be a judgment that would be made by the board, and I don't know how, at that point, what role the selectmen would have in it. I'm not sure we would have it. But when it came to if we appointed somebody for 6 months, it would be joint. But somebody would have to be elected once that next election in April comes up.
and I think it's.
And we've had that happen before.
Yes.
And I think it's important that this associate member, it isn't, so it would have to be appointed the associate member would have to be activated on a case-by-case basis until there was an appointment of a full member.
Yeah.
So let's say right now, someone resigned from the planning board and we had the associate members. So our next meeting, I could say, well, we only have 4 people, I will activate one of the associate members, and we have 5 at that meeting. Well, then the next meeting comes up, I have to do that again. Meanwhile, we would need to say, we need to get a permanent member, so then you would have another meeting like this, right?
Right.
And that has been done before, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, it has.
So it's not that this associate member would automatically, I don't get-
step into the
I don't get
spot
to appoint
automatically.
them for the rest of the year. However, under all circumstances, at the next town election, you would elect someone to fill out that term. So again, if, if somebody whose term was going to end 2 years from now resigned today, then I could activate the associate member for individual meetings up until we appointed someone to be to fill out until the next town election. And then at the next election, you'd elect someone for a 2-year term.
Yep,
And actually, we just did that with the assessor's office. Let's go.
we did. And if there was a resignation, let's say in March, and there's not enough time to really justify going through this process to appoint somebody for the remaining 8 weeks or whatever, you could either work with 4, or you could frequently appoint an associate if you had a lot of business. There's some flexibility there, but we are guided by our charter and by Mass General Law.
So, I mean, I had concerns about the appearance of it too, and just kind of what does this say about making an associate appointment? And again, the charter lays this out, and if we don't make use of that, then we're down. We're in a situation where we don't have the option if someone is disqualified, if someone recuses themselves, then we don't have that option. But having the option of the associate members and having the 2 who applied have been elected in the past, have been on the board, it's an option you don't want to walk away from as having that available. It doesn't mean that the planning board chair automatically just activates people. It has to be to fill a need, so
Yeah.
I don't feel
Like, what are the other
responsible.
boards where we could appoint associate members? Is the school committee?
Conservation Commission, just about, I think
Yeah,
the
other
way the
elected
charter
boards.
is broad.
Conservation's not elected, yeah.
But it's boards that have permitting authority that you really want to have this, that they were intended for. And for the very reason that we're talking about here, a special permit requires 4 votes. It would be not correct to have a process start with
4 members.
with
Only
only
4.
4 votes available, because there may be some dissension.
Or somebody might miss more meetings than allowed, or not be able to qualify, and they could go through the process, and then the hearing process would have to end in a new application.
This arose when the Charter Study Committee was discussing this. It was primarily around the time that we had an election in between, in a process where there was a permit being considered. And the fear always was that if the members that were sitting didn't get reelected, that would
all over again.
require the process to start all over again. And at that time, we were going through some fairly complicated university station projects, that starting all over again was not a small matter. It was a large matter. And so it was felt that we needed that protection to start a permit process that could end in a reasonable time.
Okay, anybody else wish to be heard?
Yeah, just my final word, just to clarify. So essentially, I feel that the position should be an elected position. I understand the current charter. I understand the limitations of that today. And Abby, I do know that this is advertised, so it's no knock on the advertising that was done for that. But the fact that the only two people that we received were a recent planning board member and somebody who has been the associate for a while leads to me to believe that we haven't turned enough stones within a certain amount of time. And I don't believe that there's any looming permits, any special permit applications coming forward that wouldn't keep us from doing so. So if we do move forward to vote tonight, I'll vote no. It has nothing to do with Steve or Steve. It has to do with, I feel that we need to continue, just to open it up one more time.
So in a very short period of time, late summer, early fall, we had 23 residents come forward to volunteer for two things that we were seeking. So that's what I will say. I'm curious though, Brian, what did you do to recruit?
What did I do to recruit? I spoke to a number of people, but those people didn't.
None of them applied.
I know what you're getting at, and I understand what you're saying, but it was two different time periods, and the efforts put into the comprehensive plan, we did additional things than we did for this.
Okay. Any other discussion? Any discussion or questions from the public? Okay. So then we should do the nominations individually, John.
Okay.
No, the vote.
The vote.
We have a
Yeah,
motion.
Vote for.
Have motion and.
And a motion
did you
and a second. Okay. So we'll vote one at a time. Okay. First for.
Well, I think, don't you have to take a,
We do
Oh,
a
it's a-
roll call.
It's a roll call.
but the planning board doesn't have to have a motion?
No, it's a
No?
joint
Okay.
meeting. Only one motion, joint meeting. All right, so first let's vote on Mr. Rafsky. All in favor of Mr. Rafsky?
Aye.
Okay.
No, a roll call vote, individual votes.
Okay. Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Mrs. Hyde?
Aye.
Mr. Walsh? Aye. David, you want to take the roll call of your board?
Mr. Atkins, aye. Ms. Conant.
No.
Mr. Gorman.
No.
Mr. McCusker.
Aye.
And Mr. Pfaff.
Aye.
We have 5-2.
6-2.
6-2.
6-2.
Mr. Rafsky is approved. And now Mr. Olenoff. Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Mrs. Hyde?
Aye.
Mr. Walsh? Aye.
Mr. Atkins, aye. Ms. Conant.
No.
Mr. Gorman.
No.
Mr. McCusker. Aye. Mr. Pfaff.
Aye.
Okay.
6-2.
6-2. Mr. Olenoff is approved. I guess that concludes our joint meeting. Did you want to?
Do you have a motion to?
Motion to
Adjourn.
adjourn the meeting?
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Wow, Steve, you had
Good luck with the
unanimous vote on that one.
comprehensive plan, that's a
Thank
good
you.
process.
All right, so next we have our future Board of Selectmen meetings, which means that hopefully all pulled out our schedules ahead of time to figure out, but probably not. So we have our meetings through December. Ready, Betsy? Can you write them down? So our last meeting in December is,
The 10th with a possible for the 17th if needed.
okay. And so how is January 7th?
Perfect.
Right? Yes, okay, so
Fine.
January 7th.
We should meet on the 21st, right?
We should, yeah, we'll meet before the FinCom. on Monday, the 21st?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, good. So then, Mike, should we meet the night before the
Wait a
FinCom
minute.
budget presentation? Okay.
When you said meet before FinCom, you mean the day before, not an hour before?
No, the
Okay.
No, the day before.
21st, yeah, because I don't think,
Yep, I just
Okay.
want to be sure.
yep. And then, so, February 4th?
Mm-hmm.
John?
Yeah, works for me.
Okay. And then we'll go to the 25th,
Yep.
Yes.
okay? Although, we have FinCom public hearing first on the 4th. We're going to meet a half hour before that or an hour before? John?
Yeah, that works.
Okay. You with us, Betsy?
I am.
Okay, that's March 4th. We'll meet before the FinCom meeting. Probably do our own meeting on the 18th.
Yep, that works.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
And then before the FinCom public hearing, probably, 1 hour before,
Mm-hmm.
on the 25th. We get into April. We'll do the 8th and the 29th.
Yep.
How about, okay.
Into May, we have, obviously we'll meet before town meeting, and then do the 19th when
Yep.
Mrs. Hyde will take over?
We won't have had a full meeting since April 29th. We should probably do May 12th.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
That works.
That's just 1 week after town meeting, that's why I thought you might want to take a break.
No, I'm more looking at the sequencing because I think tonight demonstrated we kind of got backlogged. We had a long break, and I think to keep it kind of
Yeah,
every
but
2
I'm
weeks
just
is-
thinking what's going to be after town meeting is probably going to be nothing on our agenda.
Who knows, Mike?
Okay.
Who knows?
So the 12th?
A little far out to prepare, yeah. Is that good enough here? 5 months out?
It's going to be Christine, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's good enough.
Works for me.
I can't even think
Okay.
about June right now.
Yeah.
And you'll send out a list tomorrow?
I'm going to send
Okay,
out a list
thank you.
tomorrow.
That's great. Good job. Okay.
Chief?
Good times.
Okay. I am here tonight to give you an update on the emergency access roadway that we were looking to put into place in the Downey School neighborhood. And at your directive, we did hold a public meeting that was well attended by the residents on August 16th. That evening, I presented a PowerPoint presentation, which I think you have in your packets this evening. Started to go through the presentation, but the questions from the residents really took over, so we just called an audible and we just did what the residents wanted to do. And they did present several concerns. They did feel that we were just railroading this through and that we hadn't thought this out. But I had them rest assured that that's not what was going on, that we were there. We did have our ideas of what we felt should be in place. We had done our due diligence and done the research, but they wanted a little bit more. So their top concerns basically were the concerns and safety for their children, which are our concerns also. I mean, that's what we're in the business for, to prevent injuries, hence the reason we're actually looking at putting in and mitigating risk. That's a concern of ours. They were also opposed to doing a curb cut on Forb because we had just put in and spent money on the granite curbs there, which we totally understand, but to get access for our apparatus, we would have to do some type of modifications for that. So there's not much I can do with that. Overwhelmingly, they felt the Downey Street connection to Downey Street in Norwood was the best option. However, I have a letter, as you saw in your packet, from Norwood that basically says we can't do that. Years and years and years and years and years ago, it was designed to cut through there, but was never made. It was allowed, and it was abandoned. It became a cul-de-sac. There was just no way. There is a right-of-way there, but it's not in the direction of what we want to do and where we need to go to make those two connections. so it's a moot issue. The Purwell connection would never work because of the change in grade. Many of the residents felt there was no issue, and why was I concerned about it? And I made I'll say it, a foolish assumption that nobody would turn the fire chief down that wanted to open up an access to mitigate risk. I was wrong. So I did the study, I looked at it. In the past 11 years, we've been to 467 calls in that neighborhood, which is about 43 calls per year. They average all through the day. In that time frame, we responded to 271 fire incidents and 205 medical calls, 13 actual fires. So one fire a year in that neighborhood. Last weekend alone, we had an accident on East Street that closed East Street down, and we couldn't get access to there. It was at the bridge, but it wasn't a truck, thankfully. It was just a car, and the accident occurred. It basically blocked traffic for about 30, 45 minutes. So it's in those situations where my concern lies. It's not in this, we negotiated with MBTA to allow us to, them to pay us basically to do a standby in the Downey School area during these weekends, which has basically cost them around $14,000 to do. So they took that upon themselves, which was great. But it doesn't help us long-term. Yes, it addressed the immediate need of the event, but it doesn't give me rest when I'm looking at mitigating risk throughout the community. So my recommendation after everything we've done and all the research that we've done is to still move forward with putting a emergency access roadway into that area. Appropriate work with DPW, configure the area, put the appropriate protection up so that cars can't travel there, and it would only be used by the fire department during emergencies. So that's my recommendation to the board, and I'll leave it in your hands. I'm not sure what you've received as feedback from that event, but I can hopefully answer any questions you might have.
But I'm just going to go one step further. I think that we owe it, and we promised to the residents that we would be back to them. I think I'm going to fine-tune the recommendation. The recommendation is that the Board of Selectmen feel that it's appropriate to go back to the neighborhood, present them with the data that we have, what we looked into for the way of alternatives, and why we, and the amount of calls, because they didn't think there were any calls, and therefore that's not true. And to give them the facts and to tell them that, the best and most appropriate answer is the one we had originally come to, but can we find a way to make that work that makes them feel comfortable, but addresses the issue that we have in front of us?
Chief, do we have diagrams or,
I didn't go through architectural drawings.
renderings? So
for
you might want to do that before we go back to the neighborhood and say, this is what it would look like, and this is how,
I don't even think this is ripe. So we've operated for 107 years with this very narrow bridge, right? This access point. This weekend, it will double in size. Can we just let that sit for a little while and see how it goes and what we collect for data? I mean, I feel like, I just don't feel like this is ripe. There was two issues when this issue started. One was the immediate, the 2 weekends of shutdown, right? And we got through that.
Well, we got through one so far, yes.
Well, God willing, we're going to get through the second one. We're then taking a roadway, we're doubling the width that we've lived with. I know what you're saying, but we've lived with it for 107 years, and we've made do. Can we just see how we do for a little while?
I mean, that's totally up to you. For me, I promised you when I got hired that my sole purpose would be to mitigate risk. I've identified the risk in the community, which that is a risk, even though we've lived with it for 100+ years. I would say no, because just because you've doubled the width doesn't mean we're not going to have that same accident we had this past week. that just shut traffic down for 40 minutes.
So the accident was completely unrelated to the bridge?
Yeah, well, they hit the
hit the
bridge,
curb.
but
They hit
Okay,
the bridge.
There's a
so-
curb stone.
they hit the sidewalk
But
of
Jeff,
the bridge.
Chief,
Which
But even
happens.
if you
When
widen it,
even when you widen it, the chances of you not being able to get a truck through have decreased dramatically.
I'm not even looking at trucks anymore, that it will resolve the. well, I
Trucks.
can't say that.
Yeah.
It should take care of most of the trucks
Mm-hmm.
that go through there. My concern is the vehicles now. You will still have motor vehicle accidents. We've had motor vehicle accidents that shut down that road up in front of the bridge coming out of Smith. We've had them at the intersection that blocks it. It's not the bridge now that I'm really concerned about. We fixed the truck issue. That normally is a long-term event. I'm looking now at the short-term event. And if you're having a cardiac issue, at that 207 calls, if that's a cardiac issue for you, you don't want us spending 12 minutes to get to your
But we
address.
do risk mitigation and risk assessments by looking at data
Mm-hmm.
and looking at our experience.
Right. And I can't tell you why this was never brought up before. It's for me.
Because there wasn't a risk.
Well, to me, it was never identified as a risk.
Right.
I see it as a risk. And I'm making you aware of the risk. It's ultimately, as
Yeah.
the
No, I hear
road commissioners, it's up to you to make that decision. I've put that to you. If you don't want us to continue forward, that's totally up to you.
I don't. I think I'd rather revisit it in a year.
What about our two neighbors on both sides? How are they, the people that own the property, we talked about where the path goes, or the emergency access, right? So don't, the property owners on both sides,
I think we spoke with one property owner. I can't remember if the second property owner was there. One was concerned that it seemed like her property was being over-maintained by the town. And we were creeping onto her property. She wants it down the middle. If we do anything with this, she wants it a shared sacrifice.
okay.
So to split the middle of the easement and clear it out from side to side, she wasn't totally happy with it, but she understood, at least as I took it.
Okay.
Her biggest concern that she expressed to us in regards to that was that she felt her property was being
Singled out.
singled out
Okay.
unfairly.
And so do we speak to the other one, Mike, on the other side?
I don't know which
I
one
have
you
not,
talked
I
to.
have not got
Well,
confirmation that.
it was a husband and wife. Are we talking about the husband and the wife? Because the husband had a different position than
But
Mike.
they were on the other side.
That was
That was the same side of the.
Yeah, that's what I
the-
thought.
The property.
So the husband was in favor of it, didn't, but his wife had some concerns, which you just
Reservations.
expressed. I don't think we tried to reach the other person. We
Have
weren't-
not
have
not been able to
they've
reach the
not been
person on the other side.
Were they
available.
there at that meeting, though? You haven't been able to reach them
don't
again,
know.
or
I
you don't
don't
know if they
know.
were there in the
Yeah.
first place?
Because they signed in, but I didn't have addresses.
Oh, that's too bad. I think we should have another meeting with the neighbors and discuss it. I don't think it's with the intent to force this to happen. I think the next one, I know I would like to be at it. I would hope my fellow colleagues on the board would be at it. I think we need to have an open discussion, and I would like to go over with you to the site and see it through your eyes. And I think as well, there might be neighbors who, maybe we do a site visit sometime, because I think this is serious enough for the neighbors that we either have to find a way to make this work, because they're the ones that are impacted by it not working. That's what you're worried about.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can talk things through and find resolution that allows what you're proposing to go forward. We may find something different. I don't really know, but you said you promised that we would talk to them again. No decision's going to be made tonight.
Right.
And I'm not even signaling you that I agree.
Yeah, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for.
Yeah, you can always schedule a meeting with the residents, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't need this side of the table to initiate that.
Right.
And I'm not, let's be honest, that meeting in the summer was not a good meeting.
No, it was, but
It was a bad meeting.
It was an informative meeting.
Well, it was emotional.
It was very emotional, and that's why I took
They
the
are.
stance that I took.
But I'm telling
with
you,
that.
so you have every right to go meet with neighbors. Go forward. My sage advice, you're not letting it, the emotions that you saw in the summer, coming back 3 months later, I think is going to work against you. It's your choice.
Take some time. Your version of time is a year. Maybe that's too long. I don't know.
What you're going to hear from people is, we just replaced a 110-year-old bridge. We doubled the width. I mean, I'm just telling you. I mean, go for you don't need our authority or our permission to do that, so go forward. I just think you're working against yourself. I think in the long run, this needs a little time.
So Chief, I haven't already walked these places and run these places, because when I run, I've run down that Downey Street path. Clearly, it's not accessible by any vehicle, and it tips off to the side of the that giant hill on the backside of Downey. You know, where you come back into to the Westwood side from Norwood. The other issue, I mean, as far as I know exactly where this access is, I've run it 100 times. Quite honestly, I don't understand what the fuss is all about. Right now, it is a path, and there are 2 rocks in the middle of it, and the trees are, covering it. So, having run through this, and Saturday morning, Sunday morning, I never see anybody on it, never. And I'm sure the kids cut through from Forbes to go to school.
Yeah,
That's
they
where it
definitely
comes
do
from.
that. That's one of their biggest concerns
Right.
that the parents expressed about the kids using it to go to school.
Well, and what John says about, it's been this way for 107 years. Okay, but we have stuff that didn't happen 107 years ago that police and fire might have to get to the school, that, all access could be cut off, the roads could be shut down, and that would be another access to be able to get to the school. So, I mean, it's change that's, I think, is important. And I live in the neighborhood, so I see this. The people from Forbes, I think the only real people that are impacted are the people's property, and it really is kind of their decision. And if they wanted to do it and they've let the town use it all along, I'll be honest with you, I keep saying from the beginning, this is not a matter of, if this gets used 4 times a year, I would be amazed. It might get used never.
Right.
But at least it's there as an opportunity to help the school and the neighbors if there's ever some blockage. So.
Right.
I don't think usage is necessarily the issue. It's the changing face of that neighborhood.
It's not going to change it at all.
It is. You're going to
see
do a lot of cutting. Micah, you can't leave it as it is. Could you drive a fire truck through there today if you move the rocks? You're cutting way back.
We would clear back
Yeah.
the easement.
You're making a
to
road.
Where we could, but
Yeah.
we're not going to make it as a road,
No,
John.
it's only one
Our-
truck
our-
getting through.
Our plan is to leave it, compact it, so we can drive on it, but it would look just the way it looks right now.
And what are you going to do to prevent other cars from going on it?
There's going to be
Gate.
not a gate. The residents asked us not to do a gate because it doesn't look good, and with bicyclists running through there, they could run into a gate or a chain. We're going to use ballards, and they're collapsible ballards, so we can drive right over them.
Good luck convincing the neighbors.
So another meeting with the residents.
Which is fine.
Okay.
That's what we were looking for is your guidance from this point anyway, so.
Yeah, I don't want it represented that we're in favor of this.
No,
At least I'm not.
We weren't asking you for that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Go forth.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, last on our scheduled business. Sarah?
Poor Sarah.
I was
Should
wondering.
have
why
reminded
you're
me,
still
Sarah. I
here.
would have had you come up earlier so you could have went home, but
That long drive.
actually next time remind Betsy so she puts them together in the.
Sorry, Sarah. It's all right. It is old business. It's fine.
They
All right,
came
so
in
you
at
have
2 different
321
times, so-
Washington Street.
Well, she
So
saved us for this. Oh,
this is for the extra unit.
Correct. So previously, I came before the board on this application regarding the addition of a third affordable unit at 321 Washington Street, with the first 2 already being approved in 2017. We received your authorization to allow the chairman to approve the marketing plan and the proposed regulatory agreement amendment that would change that 2 units to 3 units and submit that to DHCD, which he did in October. DHCD responded and allowed us to go forward with the execution of that regulatory agreement amendment. And so what I'm requesting this evening is that you authorize that execution.
I think
Questions?
we've
I
talked
feel
about
bad
this
you
a lot.
stayed this long
Me
for
too.
this.
I know. All right, I'm
No
gonna.
one
We're all-
brought it- no
we're
one
all
brought it to
feeling
my
bad for you,
attention,
Sarah.
sorry.
All right, I move that the
I'll make it
board,
up to you next time.
that the board authorize the chairman to execute the amendment to the regulatory agreement for the affordable units at 321 Washington Street, and that the chairman sign the 3 required hard copies of the amendment.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, Sarah,
Have a
thank
good
you.
night.
Yeah,
Well,
you're a good
that-
sport.
Could I ask you to bypass the next issue? I've had some suggested modifications to the minutes, and it's getting late, so
So we'll skip the minutes?
skip the minutes.
Skip the
We'll
approval
do
of the
them
minutes
another
to our
time.
next meeting?
And if you have any comments, let us know.
Okay. So that concludes our meeting this evening, except we're going to executive session. The Board of Selectmen will be going to executive session to discuss two issues. One pertaining to real estate transaction on a town-owned parcel of land on Route 1, and one issue pertaining to town employee contracts.
That's not-
Okay,
sorry.
so we didn't make the correction to the script.
Okay.
The Route 1 land
Parcel.
use, that's
It's off
not
the-
on.
it's off the script.
It's off the script.
All right, so we have two issues.
issues, right.
Town employee contracts, and one pertaining to potential litigation of Reynolds Farm Way, which would have a detrimental effect on the position of the governing body if discussion were held in open session. The board will not be returning to open session. Our next scheduled meeting will be Monday, November 26th.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. You potentially could be returning to
See the
open
emphasis.
session at the end of the executive session.
It says that at the end of the bullet point.
Okay. All right. The
All right.
board may be returning to open session.
Right.
If we do not, our next meeting will be November 22nd, November 26th, here in the EOC training room. Do I have
I move we move into executive session for the aforementioned reasons.
Second.
Mrs. Hyde?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Mr. Walsh? Aye. Thank you. All right, we are back from executive session, back in open session. We went to discuss the traffic supervisor's contract. Board of Selectmen have data now from the Human Resources Director, thank you, Joan, on the new traffic supervisor's contract from neighboring, she gave us neighboring communities to compare it with. Current contract between the town and Westwood Traffic Supervisors Association expired on June 30th, 2016, and a new contract has been negotiated as of September 11th, 2018. The terms are contained, and you will be able to find them in the minutes. And so after our discussion, do I have a motion?
I move we ratify the contract with the traffic supervisors as proposed.
For a period of July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2021.
Thank you, yes.
And a second?
I second it.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
move we adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll be back on November 26th. Thank you, and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.